Hey there, welcome to the channel. So when I think summer, one of the dessert type things I think of is actually s'mores, and they're not even my favorite thing. I'll have one and then I'm usually good. Tara likes s'mores and doesn't have them very often. You need fire and you need gluten-free graham crackers and all that stuff. I think they're messy, but I saw a recipe the other day and I thought this is a good idea. So instead of making s'mores as they are, I still have the chocolate, but I picked up some marshmallow fluff and I already had some gluten-free graham cracker crumbs. So today on the channel, let's make some gluten-free s'mores bars. I'm Jamie with SavorySaver. I share gluten-free recipes, tips, tricks, and resources to make your gluten-free lifestyle easier. So please consider hitting subscribe and let's get started. Okay guys, so a couple things. This recipe comes from whattheforkfoodblog.com. I will link down below to the full recipe. Ingredients will be listed in the description below, along with anything you might not be able to find. Not everyone near me sells fluff. I did find this at Walmart, so I would check there or your local grocery store or online, of course. I'm using Kenny Kinnick's gluten-free graham cracker style crumbs. Also found these at Walmart, but they're available online as if you can't find them there. And I don't have a lot of places around here I can get this other than Walmart. The recipe calls for a gluten-free flour blend. I'm using Bob's Red Mill today, and because it already has the xanthan gum in it, we will not be adding the additional xanthan gum that the recipe calls for if you don't have a complete flour. So this isn't gonna take very long to put together. Let's get them together and get them baked off. So I went through the directions. It does not look like a difficult recipe at all, so I don't think we're gonna have any issues with it. So we're gonna start by creaming our wet ingredients. Of course, butter and sugar, they're considered wet ingredients typically. So I've got 1 stick or half a cup of unsalted butter that's been softened to room temperature. I also have a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar and a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. You wanna beat it all together until it's nice and creamy. So everything's nice and creamy. I'm gonna bump it all back down to the bottom of the bowl. Next, we want to beat in 1 egg that's at room temperature. Of course, that will mix in faster and more easily. And 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Maybe a little more because I like vanilla extract. Let's beat it in till smooth. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's put this off to the side for just a second. It's time to mix up our dry ingredients. So I have 1 1/4 cups of the Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1. I also have 3/4 cups of those Kenny Kinnick gluten-free graham cracker crumbs. To that, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. That, of course, is gonna give everything a little bit of lift. And we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of fine salt. If your gluten-free flour blend does not have xanthan gum, at this point, you would wanna add 1/2 teaspoon of that. Let's get everything a quick whisk. Back to our wet ingredients. We're gonna add the dry to the wet. And we wanna mix it until combined. I'm still gonna use the hand mixer and just see how that does. We don't wanna over mix it, but we're not building any gluten, so that may not matter. So it's pretty much mixed in. I'm gonna give it a couple turns with the spatula just to make sure there's not any dry flour or anything. There's a little bit of a dusting, so we'll just get that mixed all in. So everything's mixed together. We're gonna use this as a double duty ingredient because part of it's gonna be our crust and part of it is gonna be a topping. So let me get our pan. The recipe calls for a 9x9 baking dish. I've got an 8x8 here, I think. I'm not worried about it. They'll be a little thicker. They might need another minute or 2 to cook. You wanna either spray your pan with nonstick cooking spray or line it with parchment paper. So I've got mine lined just because I'm gonna try to get some nice pictures of this, or nice in my standards anyway. So just eyeball what you think you need. Put it in the pan. I think wet fingertips are gonna be helpful for this. Let's see. Well, maybe not. All right, let's try it out. All right, stuff's getting sticky. I threw some water in a bowl. Let's see if that helps. So let's talk about spreading this. This is a difficult batter to spread, but I've got a big tablespoon here. I've dipped it in some water, and then I'm kind of rocking the spoon to the corners. And that's doing a really good job of pressing that dough off the sides and getting it where I want. I can almost rock it over to the sides and the corners. So if you make this recipe, and you're finding that you're having some issues, I would try this technique to see if it helps, because it's much easier at this point for me to maneuver into the pan where I want it. And I'm not getting as much sticking either. Okay, I think we're pretty even. So our next layer is chocolate. So I have got 5 Hershey bars that are 1.55 ounces each. I've opened them all up, and I just want to evenly press it into the batter all around the pan. And I'm gonna do it upside down. I don't think it matters. And then I guess at this point you have to play puzzle. All right, so I've got some extra chocolate bar here, and if you have a 9x9, of course, you're probably gonna use the rest of that. I'll just put that off to the side. I also am not a big fan of Hershey's milk chocolate, but Tara is, so she will snack on that later. Now I've got a 1.5 cups of marshmallow fluff. So we're gonna spread that evenly over this and see how many curse words I need to edit out of this video. So I think we'll just work through it like I did the crust, and I'll give you guys some tips on what's working for me, because obviously sticking is an issue. All right, so plenty of sticking marshmallow in here. You may want to either eyeball this part of the recipe or spray your cups down with a little bit of cooking spray to help that release. All right, let's see how the spreading goes. If it doesn't spread well with this, we will try something different. So it's actually going a little bit easier than spreading the base, I think, even though it's still super sticky, but I'm getting kind of lazy and I don't want to spread it out to that. So I'm gonna get a little more marshmallow fluff. Okay, so it's spread all the way across, about as even as I'm gonna get it. And one thing with fluff, if it's not a total solid, so it's actually smoothed itself out just a little bit. So for the topping, the recipe says to carefully spread it across the top. I think I'm going to crumble it instead. And it's not gonna crumble like a strudel or a streusel is, but I think I'm just gonna take bits of it and just try to evenly coat the top. I think that's gonna be a lot easier than spreading it. And probably one thing we could have done is tossed this into the refrigerator for a couple minutes while I was doing everything else, and that would have chilled the butter back down a little bit. Start with your sides. That way there, it's a whole lot easier to fill in the middle as opposed to trying to get the sides covered. So start on your sides and then do your middle. Okay guys, that's as good as it's gonna get. It's pretty well evened coverage. We may get some bubbling up. We'll see what that does. You wanna bake this in a preheated oven, 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Once it comes out of the oven, you want to cool it completely before taking it out of the pan and cutting it into squares. I will not be showing the cutting on camera probably because I'm probably going to curse, but I haven't cursed yet, so we're doing good. Let's get this baked and see how they came out. So here are our s'mores bars. They've been baking for 30 minutes, and just what I thought, the actual marshmallows have come up through those cracks. I think I'm okay with that. They're gonna be hard to cut anyway. I don't think that's gonna change anything. I think that the cutting is gonna be a process, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, I'm gonna let these cool, and then I will get them cut, and we'll give them a try and see what I think. It's been about an hour, and the gluten-free s'mores bars are done. So I cut a few of them, just enough to get some photos, but they actually cut really well. All I used was a flat knife, so no serrated blade, but it didn't really stick that much, so that's good. You can see the chocolate layer and then the marshmallow on top. Let's give it a try and then we'll talk about the recipe. So, for someone who doesn't really like s'mores that much, these are really good. All right, that little piece is gone, so I guess it's time to talk about the recipe. So in regards to taste, they are chewy and almost like a blondie brownie consistency to me. The chocolate has firmed back up a little bit, so it's not totally solid, but it's not near as soft as you would think. It's like it's melted and then it's kind of set a little bit again. Not a bad thing at all. I like that it changes the texture of the cookie / bar a little bit. The marshmallow rounds out everything, so you do get a little bit of the graham taste, and you get the chocolate, and you get the marshmallow. So let's talk about the recipe process itself. First up, The directions were easy to follow. I didn't have any trouble following the directions of the recipe. Troubleshooting the recipe was a little different. I did find that wet spoon trick actually did the best at spreading out the bottom batter / dough. Layering in the candy bars, no big deal there. And then the marshmallow, it's just a work in progress. It actually, I felt it was a little easier than the batter was. In regards to the marshmallow fluff itself, I don't think I would measure it next time. Scoop out about 1.5 cups of it and either dollop it across the top and then spread it, or throw it in the middle and spread it out the best you can. You're not affecting the baking process itself if you can keep it around 1.5 cups. So I don't think I would measure that next time. The dough on the top, I feel did really well with me just breaking it up and putting it across. If you want to make it a little easier, I do think chilling down that dough would help some. So I don't think that's a bad idea with that. Even though I didn't do that, I kind of think that would help that out. So in regards to this recipe, Tara will be tasting these tonight, I'm sure. I would make these again, even with a little bit of struggle. I think it's a good recipe. I think it's a good, easy one to follow. I think it's easy ingredients to find for the most part. I will link below if you can't find anything, but they're nice and golden on the bottom. They've got some texture and some visual appeal on the top. Guys, what do you think of this recipe? Please give me your thoughts, your comments, your questions. I'd love to hear from you. I want to thank you so much for watching. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video.